Welcome to the Small Business Sisterhood podcast. I'm your host, Pepper Makepeace, an online business strategist for female solopreneurs and side hustlers, and the founder of the Small Business Sisterhood, an online membership community serving small business owners in the first stages of business. Join me as I go behind the scenes with female entrepreneurs, revealing the struggles, strategies, and inspiring stories of these amazing women. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded women in a supportive online community that helps you stay focused, motivated, and accountable as you build your business, check us out at smallbusinesssisterhood.com. Today we're talking to Deb Matlock. Deb grew up in the mountains of Colorado and has spent 25 years working as a professional environmental and humane educator and naturalist. Her business, Wild Rhythms, offers numerous avenues for people to explore their deeply personal connection to nature, wildness, animals, and the world of spirit, and to explore their personal contributions within those connections through personal spiritual guidance work, animal communication, and nature connection workshops and retreats. Well, thank you, Deb, for being on the podcast today. I'm so excited to talk to you. I love your business, and I can't wait for everyone to hear what you do. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to chatting, and chatting about business is really fun. So I think it's a great topic, and I look forward to connecting with your audience as well.
Wonderful. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a small business called Wild Rhythms, which I've had for about 16 years, and I focus on sacred connection to earth, animals, and the world of spirit. And I do that through animal communication work, nature-based field retreats, workshops, presentations, and also individual spiritual guidance and shamanic journeys type work. So it's kind of in my mind, it's all the same work, but it happens in a few different ways: group, individual,
Okay. Yeah.
So.
How did you get started with that kind of work?
It's interesting. I feel like the work kind of came to me and said, you have to figure out how to do this. I was, my lifelong journey with the natural world and communicating with the spirit world and with the animals around me. It was just something I did as a child all the way through adulthood. I did take a little hiatus in my teenage years when I suddenly decided that all of that was crazy and I didn't want to be doing that stuff. So I had a little enculturation that happened there, and I had to kind of come back around to honoring my experiences and reclaiming the value of it, and also seeing the value that it had for others. But within all that, I was working as an environmental and humane educator and was really happy. I love that career field, but I also found that I needed a place that I could do the work that was really calling to me, the creative work, in some cases more spiritual work. I couldn't do working for like a government organization, for example. I couldn't do some of the work I was really wanting to do. So I kind of reluctantly, I have to admit, started a business. I was nervous. I thought, what in the heck is this? I don't have a business degree. I don't really know what I'm doing here. But I felt like that was the way to do it. And honestly, I'm so grateful because I've really learned through having a business what an amazing relationship that is with myself and the world and my business, which kind of feels like its own being at times. So,
yeah. Yeah, like our best friend.
Yeah. It's like, what are you doing over there? Oh, wait, I need to catch up. Hold on.
Right.
That wasn't on my list for today. Okay.
Right. Well, that's really interesting that, I love to hear the stories of people that were really called to the work that they're doing. It wasn't something that they sat down and said, I want to have a business and what can I do? It's a different journey, I think, for folks that it's like, almost like you said, the reluctance of of following that, that feeling of, this is something the world needs and I need to do in a business capacity. I think it's such an interesting way to come to business.
Yeah, and I think it's, the learning curve coming to it that way for me at least has been steep, but also really profound. I mean, I really wouldn't go back. And the longer I stay in business, the more I realize how much I love being an entrepreneur, and I love all the creative opportunities, all the challenges. Of course, there are challenges,
Right.
And I really, it kind of gets me fired up, all of these things. So it's like a double experience. One is I really love the work and I love being able to offer it. And the other is I'm really loving having a business, which if you'd asked me years ago, I would never have thought I would say that today.
What do you like about it? Like, tell me more about that business aspect that appeals to you or gets you creative. Like, tell me more about that.
Yeah, there's so many things. I would say one of the biggest things that I'm really coming to understand is business, small, medium, large, business that's run really consciously with a deep awareness of how can we do the highest good, the best good, how can we really offer something to the world? The potential within business is mind-boggling to me. And I feel like each day I'm learning more and more about what all of us as business owners can really do.
Mm.
Um, to be cultural change agents, and I think early on in my life, I thought you had to be a nonprofit or you had to be in a big organization, and now I'm realizing a solopreneur can actually have impact and have a way to contribute. So that's one of the pieces. A few other pieces are logistical. Like I really love running my own schedule. I really love making my own decisions, even the ones that don't necessarily turn out well. It's like, well, but that was
You're still learning,
I
right?
learned, yeah, I tried that, it was an epic fail, and cool, now I know, and there's no, I don't have to spend, a lot of effort trying to get a whole bunch of approvals to try a new program, for example. I can just try it and see what my community thinks about it. I really love also working with, part of my business is about connecting to our natural rhythms and being a part of the natural world. And I find working for myself, I have more of an opportunity to do that, to kind of walk my talk a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
not every single day, of course. Some days are totally crazy and not at all. but I have more of a chance to look at my schedule and just say, okay, how do I make this really work so that I have the time I need for my home, my animals, myself, my business,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I think that that's an appealing thing to a lot of people that come into entrepreneurship, and I found that a lot of people, like, once they get like, the idea coming into it is, "I wanna have my own schedule, I wanna be really flexible, I wanna, have time for this and that," and then they get so kind of bogged down in the business work that they end up having the worst schedule ever and, like, not having time for anything because it's, like, that weird hustle culture that you kind of get trapped in that you think you're supposed to be working all the time or, like, I don't know, like, did you have any kind of, like, learning curve with that for yourself? Like, did it take you a minute to, like, kinda get into your own rhythm, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, that is such an important question, and I would say yes, there's a learning curve, and I would be lying to all of your audience if I said that was 100% past tense. Because there are definitely times where things start to bottleneck, and there's a workshop and extra this and that, and an article is due, and it's like, wait a minute, how did I let that happen to my, but I've
Mm,
also kind of come to realize that is in a way a part of the wild rhythm of the business. Because if you think about the natural world, sometimes the creative events, are explosive. There's a
right.
flood or and it's like a whole bunch of stuff happens at once and then it mellows for a while. So I've
Right.
started to try to look at those moments and say, okay, this is cool for a few days. Let's not get stuck here because, we'll blow a gasket and we'll, become really grouchy and everybody around us, but saying maybe this is just right now, there's just a moment, there's just a chunk of time where it's like, whew, okay, you know, wishing I had
Right.
more hands to put on deck because I could use,
Right.
so it kind of, and then there's a lull of time to rest and recoup. And for me, that often includes cleaning off my desk, which kind of gets nuts when things get crazy, and
Right.
so it's kind of like I was mentioning at the beginning, talking about the rhythm or the business as its own being.
Mm.
Some of that is how that kind of looks. And when I think of that, it's like, oh, you're calling for a lot of attention right now. Okay. That's cool because I'm, going camping in 2 weeks and, you know, you're not going to get me then.
No, let's do it now.
Right. I do think it's a learning curve. And I think it's especially one of the challenges I had with that is loving the work that I do. I
Mm.
found personally made it harder to set limits on that for myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
finding even a book I might be reading for fun is probably about something related to my business because it's my interest area, and
Right.
trying to say, Deb, just read. Don't worry about, oh, I should have a new workshop around this,
Right.
although sometimes that's how it is.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, and, I've had people recommend books to me, and I'm like, "I only read, like, business books." Like, it's like, I geek out over this stuff, and I really enjoy it, and it's like but I found that I can't read it, like, late at night because then I'm, like, in that mode of, like, "Oh, I could turn this into that, or I could do this," or, like, I gotta tell everybody about it, and so it's like, yeah, you have to kinda pick and choose the moments, I think.
Oh, and I totally relate. I don't read this stuff at night either because it turns my brain on instead of settling it
Yeah,
down, you know?
right? I'm always kinda jealous of those people that read before bed, and it's, like, this relaxing thing that they do, and it's like, that is not what my brain does.
Me neither. It has to be mind numbing before bed,
Right.
because otherwise it's like, "Oh, I'm getting up now and I'm gonna work for 3 hours."
Yeah. Let's start a new day right now.
Right, right.
10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you do love that work, it is like you said, it's hard. It's hard to have those boundaries that are, healthy for us to, because we need sleep and we need,
right.
proper nutrition and things like that. Like, but when you get sucked into the work because you're really, excited about it and enjoying it, like it is kind of hard sometimes, I think, to set those boundaries that are helpful.
Yeah, I have to actually put lunch on my calendar
Oh, wow.
because it's just like, what
That's smart. I should do that because that's one of my downfalls.
you
It's
know
like 3 o'clock and I've forgotten to
Yeah,
eat.
that's what I would do, and I would get to the afternoon and I'd be starving and my blood sugar would be tanking, and I would think, "Oh my gosh, I just worked through probably 2 hours ago would have been a good time to stop and actually, put some
So,
food."
yeah, putting it on your calendar, that's brilliant, I love that.
Yeah.
Are there any other kind of, like, tactics that you use to kind of make sure that like you said, I think it's really beautiful that you said that, sometimes it is more intense and hectic than others, and that's kind of part of that normal rhythm, but, being really mindful of not getting stuck in that place, like you said. Are there are there any kind of tools that you have that you use, like putting lunch on your calendar? Like, or is there anything else that you do?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I mean, that's a great question. I'll probably be thinking as I'm answering. You know, I have, since there's being a solopreneur, as probably a lot of your listeners know, every task falls on your plate, and
Yeah,
maybe people work with a VA, I a little bit, but even then, you're still choosing what to have somebody help with.
right.
Um, so I have in my mind like a kind of a hierarchy of priorities because there's very little chance I can do everything every day. And so, for example, clients are number one. If somebody's emailed or called or messaged me on Facebook, that is my first attention spot. And I work my way down from there. I don't want people waiting 3 days to get a hold of me because I'm
Mhm,
busy writing an article for a magazine that's publishing in 6 months or something.
right.
So I feel like that piece is really key. I think the other piece that's really important for me is that I check in with myself, usually in the morning or at least some point early in the day and just say, okay, what's the priority? Open myself, universe. What do I feel? What do I think? What's my priority today? Because I mean, I use Asana for my to-do lists and my projects, which
Mhm,
online software. And honestly, it's a never-ending process. There's always more
right.
to do, and so it's sometimes I do get overwhelmed thinking, "What is the priority?" Because it all feels that way. So I start
Yeah,
with clients first. Second is any loose ends of upcoming deadlines or something, and then I try to put third in there, which sometimes should probably be higher than third, is the creative space, like
mm,
writing a blog or if I've got something buzzing in my mind that I wanna create or like right now I'm thinking a lot about workshops for 2021 and a combination of virtual and in person and trying to plan for pandemic unknowns, but also
right.
knowing that I need to be ahead of it a little bit. Um, so I try to make sure there's a chunk of time that's focused on the part that moves the business forward. Because
Yeah,
I did go through a period of time where I got lost all in admin, and responding to everything that was happening on my social media really quickly and stuff like that. And I started to realize that the big picture stuff wasn't getting the attention it needed.
yeah, that I think that's an easy thing to get stuck in because
Yeah.
the admin stuff, like you said, like, it's never ending. Like, it's a constant, needy beast.
Yes. That is a good way to describe it.
And it's never gonna stop needing you. So it's, kind of recognizing when, that's all you're doing is kind of the maintenance stuff and not thinking about, the bigger picture, like how do you want your business to look in the next year and planning ahead as best we can right now anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but I love that. And I think it really speaks to your business and how you work with people. I think, tuning into your business as a person and yourself and looking at those, the needs and also, but the prioritizing the creative part and the big picture stuff too, in addition to the needy admin.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because 'cause you're right. That could be a 24-hour job and
Right.
not really.
That's why BDs are so successful because there's so much to get done all the time.
That's right, and, and it takes a certain headspace for me too to get into that groove, which,
Yeah.
isn't, but I think the other piece that I find that goes with all of that is, and this is one that I've struggled with as well, but it's figuring out all of the shoulds that I've absorbed over the years of trying to learn
Mhm.
about having a business, how to market, how to run a business, and trying to say, "Okay, which ones of those don't apply to me? Which ones don't feel good to me? Which ones don't apply to my business?" And some of that's an experimentation of just trying different things, but I realized I got really stuck for a while. I think because I went into business because I wanted to do the work and I felt insecure and vulnerable about being a business owner. It
Mhm.
took me a while to even consider myself as an entrepreneur because it felt like, oh, well, that can't be me because I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, okay, but I had a business and I was trying to run it. So, um, but I realized I was getting really inundated with all these things that you should do, should do, should do. And
Mhm.
some of them just didn't feel good to me. And it took me a while to say, well, why would I do that then? Why would I work with sales that way when it feels really awful to me? And I wouldn't want to be sold to that way. So, but yet I've heard all these experts who make way more money than I do telling me I should.
Right.
And I think one of the hardest parts was to say, I can't do it if it doesn't feel right,
Right.
and just taking that risk.
I can really relate to that. I think early in my business, so I've had my business since 2008, and like you, I'd been in the corporate world, but I've never, not the business end of running a business kind of thing. And so I didn't really have those skills of I was never in sales, I was never in those pieces of the business that you think you have to do a certain way, and you go out and you try to learn because there's so much information out there and trying to sift through all the stuff. And there are, that does work for some people to
Yeah.
to sell it, like, really tie into people, like like pull the emotional strings or whatever. And it's like I feel like I'm manipulating people. I don't want to do that. Like
Yeah.
that does not fit me. What do I do? Am I just never going to be good at sales? And really having that moment of, like you said, it's like that doesn't feel good to me, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to figure out a different way, and that's okay. And it's such a process. I think when you're like, I don't think any of us come into business thinking, oh, I know a lot about business. I know how to run a business. Like I know all the pieces, because suddenly you really are doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
Like I'm not an accountant. That is not my strong
No.
suit. Like, what the hell am I doing? So, like, there's like different pieces of it that is like you don't come in knowing, and you have to kind of sift through the information that you end up getting about how you should do it, like you said.
Yeah, I had a moment. I was at a business conference for women in Denver. I live in Colorado, and this was one of those aha moments. I went to back-to-back sessions on social media strategy because I was trying to figure out what was my social media strategy and what even is a social media strategy. And so I went to back-to-back sessions, and they were both really knowledgeable, really clearly, good at what they did, and they were presenting conflicting advice.
Oh,
And when
wow.
I walked out, I thought, "Okay, that is really informative," because they were neither one of them was wrong.
Right.
But I realized my job as the business owner was to say, "What works? What feels good to me?"
Yeah.
Because they both are having success in what they're doing,
Right.
So it was really eye-opening to say, "Wait a minute, maybe I don't need to assume that I'm not an expert. Maybe what I need to do is collect information, check in with myself, sit with it, see what works for my community, and then just decide, okay, what works for me and my business, and then that becomes my expert." Kind of like,
Yeah.
as opposed to, but it was helpful. Those sessions were helpful. I got ideas, so it
Yeah.
wasn't a waste of time. It was just really intriguing to me that, you know,
Yeah.
we've all got our ideas of what we're doing and
Right.
everybody's are different.
Right. Well, there's no real very distinct right and wrong way to do something. It's very fluid, and like you said, it has a lot to do with your audience. It has a lot to do with your business culture. Like, and I think for me, one of the biggest pieces of branding your business is knowing the voice of your business and knowing that personality of your business. And if you have like I can't imagine a business like yours having this really hard sales tactic kind of thing. That would feel really off brand
Right.
for your business. And so like if that were to exist in there, I would be like, whoa, that feels kind of out of place. Like what's going on here? And but I think that like, kind of exploring that as a business and as a business owner, really understanding, what is the voice and what is the feeling and personality of my business, and what does that look like in terms of sales or marketing or your social media strategy, because it doesn't have to be the same as the next business over. Like it's so different and so subjective.
Yeah. I love how you say that, the voice of the business and the business culture. I haven't really thought about that in those words, but that's a really beautiful way to put it. And again, going back to the business having its own personality in a way,
Right.
it is, yeah. And it's what do people really respond to? And, they oftentimes I heard in business, the no, like, and trust factor, which I think is really valid, but I feel like taking that to a super deep level, at least I know that was one of the things I realized for my business, that has to be, I need it with my clients and they need it with me. The
Yeah.
work we do is personal. Sometimes it's deep and longer term relationships that we have. So it can't just be a casual level of that. It has to go, you know,
Yeah.
deep and be really honest and authentic. And for example, in my business, one of the honest things is I don't let anybody sign up for like a long-term program after just our phone call. I always say, go sleep on it. Let me know if you
Mhm.
have questions, because I need them to feel it fits when they're away from the engagement of our conversation. Like I've
Right.
learned that is the client that it's right for. And I've
Yeah.
learned that by letting people sign up in the middle of our quote unquote call and having it not really be the right fit, because they didn't
Mhm.
go reflect on it. But these are all things learning as things go.
Right.
There were some
Yeah.
times that didn't work so well, and that's how I learned. So, you know.
Right. Well, and it's so interesting because we think, well, at least I definitely think this even now. There are times when I catch myself thinking, I should already know this. I should already know how to do this. And that's not even like realistic. Like we have to try things and see how it feels, how it plays out, how people respond to it, and then adjust as necessary. But it's like some some people, myself included, you get stuck in, well, I have to have this figured out before I even like let it loose on the world. And you can't really have it figured out before you like start talking to
Right.
people about things. So it's kind of a catch 22, but I think it's more just learning that kind of ebb and flow of feeling, recognizing that you feel like you should have it figured out, and knowing at the same time knowing that that's not how it works. It's not realistic.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things for me, was getting to the place of having the courage to take action when, there was a perfectionist part of me that was like,
Right.
"Well, but wait. Don't you wanna read that blog one more time before you post it? Don't you wanna," you know, and realizing that was never, I wasn't getting anywhere, and it's exactly like you said, it's putting out a workshop idea and having it sell out and surprise me, and putting out another one that I thought was gonna be great and having nobody interested, and
Yeah.
me having to just say, "Okay, well, let me just gather information from that. Was it the workshop? Was it the timing? Was it, how I wrote it up?" Just instead of looking at those things as failures and, "Okay, Deb, you were not ready. You totally shouldn't have done that." Or the one that was successful, saying, because that was just as imperfect. Like I still didn't know if that was going to go or not,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
It's like, whoa, what about that was so appealing,
Yeah.
And instead of looking at all of it on neutral ground and saying, okay, let me just learn from this, and even asking. And one of the things I've really started to utilize in the last couple of years, which felt really vulnerable to me at first, was asking my community about things. I'll put a poll out on my Facebook group and say, I'm working on a new workshop. Which name do you like the best? And I'll put,
Mhm.
and I would have never done that before because I would have thought, "Oh, I have to have this dialed in before I."
Be perfect.
And now I'm realizing I really wanna know which title do y'all resonate
Yeah,
with because that why not ask them? And,
right.
they get engaged too, like, I people wanna answer those kinda questions, and it's really helpful to me, and it also helps me know what they need and want.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a way for your audience to feel like they're a part of things too, like, it's
Yeah.
like they're kind of it's the beauty of the beta program too, it's like they get kind of involved in the making of the thing, and I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and what I really wanted to create is stuff that they want, which,
Yeah, right.
things can sound really great in my head, and they may not sound great to anybody else, so, it's
Yeah, been there.
it's like, "Wow, this sounded so cool," and crickets as soon as I put it out there. Okay, well,
I'm like,
hmm. No offense against crickets, of course, but they're not the ones signing up for the workshop, so
Oh, I love that. Tell me about how you like, when you first started your business and you're starting to tell people about what you're doing and what you're working on, like, how did you get that community formed?
Yeah, that has oh my goodness, it's interesting because it's been so many different ways. When I
Mm,
first started my business, in 2003, it was a very, very part-time side thing.
mhm,
There was really not social media. Really what I did at that point was I was working as an environmental educator, I had connections, I would present at a conference, and I might try to bring in a little bit more of the content that was focused on what I was doing with wild rhythms, and just trying to gently kind of creep that into the network of people I was already working in. And then as time went on, I realized I needed to be more out. I needed to be more wild rhythms needed to start taking on its own life and not just being this little quiet thing that I was holding in the back
mhm,
corner. And so I started sharing it with friends and colleagues. And so I would say the early years were pretty much word of mouth. Again, there wasn't social media, but I also was doing it. I wasn't even focusing on marketing. I didn't even. I mean, I was such a uninformed business person. And I was also working full time as an environmental educator. And so it was a side thing. So for several years, it was a very small word of mouth, which is lovely. I actually really still love that as a way to grow my business. It's
yeah,
just that's the most natural way that it feels to me. And then
yeah,
I decided a few years ago, okay, let's step it up. Let's just, I want to be presenting. I want to do more workshops. I want to be sharing the ideas more widely. And so then I decided to get into social media. I decided to start doing more networking. And for a while, I did a lot of in person networking, and some of that paid off. But I also found a lot of that for at least my kind of business didn't go deep enough. Like a big networking event downtown Denver in a ballroom in a hotel, I might talk to somebody for a minute or two.
right,
And maybe we would follow up afterwards, but what I really started to realize was that for me, the building of the business was coming with deeper contacts to start with. So whether that's content marketing like blogs,
mhm,
podcasts, doing presentations and workshops, that was where I really found that I was finding people who wanted to continue to work together. Which was fun too, because it was like the people coming in the room for a workshop or a presentation were getting value whether we ever spoke again, which really mattered to
mhm,
me as I wanted my marketing to be a service and it's on its own.
right,
I want someone to get inspiration from an Instagram post, even if I never communicate with them. I want it to be something that adds value to their life.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's that whole content marketing, and I think obviously, like you said, it applies to the lectures and workshops too. It's like you're giving value upfront without it being just you, like, telling somebody about your new widget that's for sale. Like, it's more of a sharing than it is a, like, buy my thing kind of message, and I really love I love content marketing because of that, because it's just so much more meaningful, I think, than
Yeah.
just, "I have a thing for sale, buy it."
And I have to say for me, it's where I'm finding my comfort in marketing because I
Yeah,
really this was the part of my business I struggled with and avoided like the plague. I literally at one point thought, I'm just always gonna let it be word of mouth and I'm never gonna do anything about that. I'm just gonna let it happen
mhm,
naturally, which okay, that's fine. Be a smaller size business, take longer to grow. Maybe that's cool for, you know, um, but what I found with this is that it actually feels to me like I'm the educator in me, and the person who wants to share is getting to do that. And oh, by the way, people are learning about wild rhythms,
Right.
Um, and then when people do reach out, the other thing I'm finding is that the connections we're already having are more comfortable and natural.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
they already have a sense of who I am and what my viewpoints are, and they've
Right.
already checked it all out. And when we're talking, then we're starting at a whole different place, which
Yeah.
feels really good too.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So people that are just starting out and thinking about, how to get the word out about their business, how to connect with people about their business, like, do you have, what would you say, like, number one thing, maybe number two, like, what would you recommend that they do to get the word out?
Yeah. Let's see. I think number one, I would say, is just really be yourself. So
Mm,
whether you're on social media or you're meeting with people in person or you're offering webinars, just letting yourself be who you are, and that can be sometimes scary. But I know when I think about the people that I've hired in my life for various things over the years, it matters to me that I know who they are. And
yeah,
I also really want that with my clients, because I don't want to have client relationships where I'm having to not be myself. And
right.
so by starting out with my own voice, and this is a growing edge for me, I'm not going to lie. This is a place that I still am pushing myself on, is to say how much more of my own voice can I share, because I was stuck in the shoulds of, what I should you talk about their pain points. What I don't even talk about pain points. I talk about value. I talk about what people want in life.
Right.
What do they want their, you know, it's like I want to focus on that positive piece.
Right.
So be yourself. And then the second piece is, don't be afraid to try things, and know that some of those things are going to be not so, they're going to be epic fails, but they're, I, I think I went to the Da Vinci exhibit at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science last fall, and I really was taken by how many of his quotes on the walls were talking about how important it was to fail, quote unquote, fail.
I love that. Yeah, failing is, why do we avoid it so hard?
I know.
It's such a learning experience every time. It's like there's no other way to learn than to fail. Sometimes it
Yeah,
feels like.
and to try stuff and then learn from those things. So I would say, those two pieces, being yourself and being willing to just take some risks and play with things,
I love that.
and knowing that as a relationship, you and your business are going to grow closer and closer. And sometimes you're going to be a little bit like in an argument, and sometimes you'll be closer again, you know, um,
Right.
but it's all worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really good advice. I knew it would be.
I guess if I have one more thing that's just popping into my mind, is the other one is about expectations.
Mm,
Like putting a workshop out there without doing community building first, may or may not go well. But not to take that in and say, well, I expected that to be a certain way and now it didn't. So obviously I'm a horrible business person,
mm.
but just saying, okay, well, maybe that just means I need to focus on community building for a while, so that there's actually people who want to look at my workshop, and letting the expectations go and letting it be a natural process.
Well, and like you said, like, people, as do we like to participate in a business relationship with people that we feel good about, and people that we feel comfortable with, and businesses that we feel good about. Like, even things that you buy just randomly, like coffee, or like we had a conversation about toilet paper. Like,
Right.
I want it to be like a meaningful interaction. I want it to be, you want to know that that business and that person that is running that business cares about the same things you do, and really aligns with your values. And especially now, I think we're really looking at how, like, that back aspect of business is not just about the product, but the culture of that business. And are they donating, and do they care about the planet, and like all these things that we need to think about. It's really kind of front and center right now, as it should be. And I think, like you said, like, before you put that workshop out and nobody knows who you are, because you haven't done that extra piece of, the blogging and the community building and the, just sharing of yourself, there isn't that connection yet, or that understanding that this is what they're about, and this is what they believe in, and that aligns or doesn't. And then you can make a decision. So it's like, it's really kind of understanding that process of building relationships, I think, with people that potentially would buy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, going back to the marketing concept about marketing being kind of an offering, of thinking of marketing as a relationship building tool first and foremost, and not about a monetary exchange has
Yeah.
also helped me, because I have talked to people on the phone for a get connected, and we've decided not to work together at
Hmm.
this point in time, but yet there's other ways we're collaborating. It's like there's another reason for us to connect that isn't about a monetary exchange, but yet it's a mutually beneficial opportunity. So kind of going into all of that in my mind as let's just get to know each other a little bit and see what naturally emerges, which is kind of lovely.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you talked about, like, you initially, like, the networking. I always think, like, there's like these funny things that I think we have in our minds about, you start a business, you network, you get good at sales, and you like you figure out like all these pieces, and it's like I suck at those things. Like, and then like maybe I can't have a business. It's not, you just do it your own way. And so realizing that some of those networking events don't really align with your business and the way that you connect with people, is that's okay. That doesn't mean you suck at networking. It just means that was not the place to do it.
Exactly. And that's a question I've had to ask myself is, okay, so where do I find connections? Because it's not in these ways that I was trying. I was having lovely conversations with people, but it was all not, I would spend an entire day, drive to Denver, pay $20 to park, pay $99 for the conference, and walk out with 3 people on my mailing list who I never hear from again.
Right.
And I thought, okay, I really need to reevaluate the time and the money and the effort of that. And I've started to find that it really is better just to have a one-on-one connection, even on something like LinkedIn, where if there's somebody that we have so much in common, and then we just connect without the expectation of what this is,
Right.
you know. And in some cases, I become their client or they become mine, or in some cases, we're just staying in touch and sending referrals to each other.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I'm still kind of in my mind formulating what do I really want networking to look like? Because of course, it all got shifted with this pandemic.
Sure.
But I have to admit, one of the things that happened in my world was as I was watching all these things fall off my calendar, even though I was still trying to consciously pull back on this, I still had a lot of obligation, in-person networking, chunks of time, drive somewhere. And when they started disappearing, I thought, okay, wait a minute, I need to pay attention to how that feels kind of good to me. And
Hmm.
it's not that I don't want to connect with people, it's that those events that I was still feeling even as early as earlier this year, that I should be at least a few of those. And so
Yeah, that's
it's like now it's like, well, if there's a speaker I really want to hear, maybe I'll go. But
right.
just to go is no longer on my marketing networking plan.
Yeah,
Phew,
that's really
I'm so glad.
interesting. You're right. A silver lining in everything, right?
Yeah, right? Just have to keep sometimes like pandemics, you have to keep looking and it's like, okay, we've seen
Right,
enough
you're
silver.
really hard.
Can we stop now? But
Right.
yeah.
Well, and you've had to adjust some things about your business, because up until recently, you've been pretty one-on-one in-person kind of workshops, like, right? Has that been challenging, or
There was definitely an interesting shock wave in March when everything started getting shut down of this year.
Mhm.
Fortunately, my business model, a big chunk of it was one-on-one and even distance-based. So all my animal communication and all my spiritual guidance coaching stuff has mostly been on the phone. So fortunately, I was able to keep that part, but I also had a pretty substantial piece that was in-person workshops for the spring and summer and fall, and I was supposed to go to Canada and do a week-long in-person retreat, some staff trainings for organizations, and it was like literally overnight, like so many of us, everything just went boop, gone.
Yeah.
And even though a lot of those people are saying let's keep this on the back burner and do it again, um, when is that gonna be? 2 years, So
Yeah,
it was a
right.
little bit of a stress because it was a big chunk of cash that just disappeared instantly. And I did pull some things online and do some virtual workshops, and I did find that was really cool and rewarding in a way that, I think I was in my mind, I was thinking of doing virtual stuff, but with not the urgency or priority as pandemic like shot it way up to the top of my list. But what I've really enjoyed is having a workshop, a nature connection workshop where we've gathered and then people go out and then we come back again, so it's a little different rhythm than if we were in person, but we can have people from different countries, different states. It's been really fun to have that kind of connection come into it. And I fully intend to keep doing that because it's been really rewarding and a fun way to connect with my community, folks that maybe don't want to or are not able to do one-on-one work, but are interested, but also aren't going to fly to Colorado necessarily to do a workshop.
Right.
So I see a really important piece.
Yeah, it really opens doors to people that otherwise you wouldn't be able to work with. And now they kind of get to experience it on a little different term, but I love that. I love that you've been able to kind of adapt to the situation and have it really meaningful and rewarding beyond what you even expected. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I'll say it took that, okay, this is not perfect, I'm taking a risk feeling, because I had done years, decades really of in-person workshops, and then to take all that kind of stuff and try to put it on Zoom. I mean, that first day when people were starting to come in, I was like, okay, I'm not going to hyperventilate. I'm just going to take a deep breath, And I set the price very low, so I was very confident that they could at least get that value if something crazy happened. And, but yeah, it was definitely not, I did not have it all figured out. It was like, okay, I'm going to have to try this with people to see what I need to do better and differently.
Whew. It's been kind of a theme this year with a lot of business owners I've talked to. It's like you really just have to try stuff.
That's right.
See how it goes. Just try it.
Take it deep.
And I love that because it's so true. Like, I don't know if it's like a prerequisite to be like, to want to become an entrepreneur, you have to be a perfectionist. And then, because it's like so many of us are, it's like this hurdle that we have to overcome. And it's just really fascinating, but it is okay to just like try it.
Yeah, try it. I know that, one of the things I do in my mind when I'm doing something scary is I say, okay, what's the worst possible outcome? And so, for example, my first Zoom nature connection workshop, which is, I think, in May, I said, okay, what's the worst possible outcome? Well, it won't go as I planned, and I will refund everybody, and I will send a note saying, thanks for being part of this. This was my first run. I really appreciate your willingness. I really hope to work with you in another way. And, any other feedback is welcome. I thought, okay, the worst possible outcome, I had 10 people at $25, is that I refund $250. And then I have a personal contact with each of those people. And then I thought, you know what, that isn't that terrible. And luckily that didn't happen. Luckily it went really well, but I needed to know going in that I could manage that outcome if the computer exploded and I couldn't provide the workshop or something.
As it does sometimes.
Sometimes, exactly.
I love that. I think that's a really good reminder. I mean, really, like, we're not working in the emergency rooms and, life or death situations. It's not as dire as it feels if it were to all go wrong. And, I think I love that, you took that moment to say, okay, worst case scenario really isn't that bad. Let's just do this and like move on.
Yeah.
And it rarely happens that the worst case scenario actually happens. It's like very rarely, if ever.
It's almost like, by planning for it, it's almost like we eliminate the risk of it, like in outdoor education and wilderness hikes and all those things. One of the things that we do is talk about risk management. How do we minimize? You can't ever get rid of all the risk. It's impossible. But how do you minimize it? And then how do you plan for possible outcomes? And you've got wilderness risk management training, and I can say that same philosophy is so helpful with things like a very benign, not life-threatening Zoom nature connection workshop, where my mind is starting to get really freaked out that I've decided to do this scary thing. It's like, well, let's just manage the risk here.
Yeah. I love how, like, throughout our whole conversation, you have shown how what you teach in your business, the Wild Rhythms business, you apply to your business. And I love that you do that. And I think you're such a walk the talk kind of person. I really appreciate that about you. And you, like, where you're watching the rhythm of your business as you're working in it, the rhythm of your day, like all of these things. And then, the risk management thing. Like, I just love that there's all these different pieces. And I think that that's really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say, I think sometimes the work that we offer is also the work that we need.
We need. Yeah.
So, I have to do that because I need it too. I
Yeah.
need to be reminded that my natural rhythms and the way that I function and being connected to nature and all those things really matter. Even when there's 1,000 emails and a bunch of other things that feel really important,
Yeah.
those other pieces really matter. I can't let those disappear from my life. I just can't.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Well, Deb, it's just been so much fun talking to you, and I feel like we've gotten a lot of beautiful wisdom from you, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your time with us. Thank you.
Oh, this was so fun, and thank you again for the invitation. It's what a treat to talk about business. I don't often get to do that part of, so it was really fun, and I'm honored to be part of your podcast.
Thank you, Deb, for talking with us today. You can find out more information about Deb and the link to her website in the show notes for this episode at smallbusinesssisterhood.com/25. I hope you found this episode useful and inspiring. If you did, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.